Report this. All right. So this is what I would do if I were writing an offer on this listing. So you want to have the listing up in the MLS, and you want to have the zip forms up. And if you're not absolutely good at who pays what and where, have Chicago title transfer tax up. Now, I have agents that say to me, yeah, I have the page from, I got it from Hillary from the title company, or I have the page from some other title company. And the problem is that means you have to have that piece of paper with you when you're writing an offer. I can pull up Chicago title transfer tax on my phone and find out who pays what in a county. One of my points, I was sort of harping on this, was that the right word from yesterday? Harping? Ranting about you ought to be ready to do something at any given moment. So for example, if all of our contracts are on computers, you ought to have your computer with you at all times. You can write an offer with an iPad, you can write an offer with an Android tablet, but you ought to be carrying it with you. So if somebody says, I would like to buy this house, your answer isn't, sorry, I can't help you right now. I'll get back to you. Does that seem like a reasonable thing? All right. So the way I would start this is I would go over here and I would copy the MLS number. Copy the MLS number, and then I'm going to go down to zip forms. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to MLS Connect, right? And I'm going to paste in the MLS number. And when I do that, and I click on include the property photo, I don't know why. It doesn't appear on any forms. It just makes a photo of the property next to the list of transactions that I have in zip forms. I kind of like it. It's not important. It doesn't populate anywhere. Is everybody with me so far?
No, what does it come to say?
So to get to where I am, you have to create a transaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? You go to transaction, you create a transaction. And you pick that it's a purchase transaction and it's residential and you give it a name. It's better to name the transaction the property that you're making the offer on rather than the names of the clients. The reason is that sometimes your offer isn't accepted. And then you're writing another offer for the same clients on another property, and if you've been using the client's name as what you're calling the transaction, it gets confusing because you now have maybe 4 or 5 transactions that are named the same because you named them after the person.
Did you do apply template? Or?
Well, if you have a template, we don't need to do that now. I'm not doing templates today because I believe Laura talked about templates. If I get into templates, we don't. All we're going to do is write a purchase agreement right now. Is that all right? All right. So is everybody with me? So once you're here, you go to Property, MLS Connect, and if it doesn't say, this is the first thing, if you don't see MLS listings or whatever MLS you're a part of, and for all of us down here, it will be MLS listings. If you don't see that, you have a problem. And the problem is that your MLS is not connected to the California Association of Realtors zip form account. And the most common reason is that in the MLS under My Information, that's not mine, but actually your information, but it's called My Information. When you click on it, you're missing your NRDS number. And if you don't know how to find the NRDS number, go to Google, open up a tab, and type in, how do I find my NRDS number? And then once you put it in, if that doesn't solve the problem in 20, 30 minutes, you need to call the Association of Realtors, not the MLS. Because the MLS is going to tell you, you don't have your NRDS number. When you say, yes, I do, they're going to say, call the Association of Realtors. Right? You understand they're sort of in a relationship. Not necessarily a healthy relationship, but they're in a relationship. Right? So has everybody got that? So yours does not say. So that doesn't mean you can't write an offer. It's just going to be a lot harder. Right? It's going to be a lot harder. So you're in the same MLS, My Information, go to where it says NRDS number, click on edit, put in your NRDS number. Right? This will save you a lot of time. So I'm going to include the property photo and I'm going to click on find. Where are we, Bob? So you can't find property. So while we're waiting and doing this, let me, most people that start a real estate career fail. Most people that are in real estate don't make very much money. Just, that's a truth. And one reason is, in my view, is there's oftentimes a lack of commitment. And one of the ways that this would look is that you would practice doing it a whole bunch of times before you're actually in front of real clients. Because if you don't have all this worked out and somebody says, I'd like to buy a house, and you can't write an offer because you don't know how, or nothing is hooked up, do you understand this is going to be a problem? Right? So I'm going to keep doing this until you become good at it. Right? Do you understand? This is something you need to go through this a number of times. You should write offers. You should just pick out listings and write an offer on them. Right? Just to go, and you could send it to me. Well, anyhow, was that too much? And yes, I know agents that have been in the business a long time and they look at their offers and there's problems, but they at least don't act, they at least are writing offers. All right, so now that we've done that, we clicked on find, it finds it, we click on import. Do you want to replace the existing data with imported data? We answer yes. Now what this has done is it's filled out all the information about the listing, so we don't have to. If you don't have MLS connected, you have to manually type in the address of the property, the city, the state, the zip code, the assessment parcel number, the list price. Yes, and you have to type all that stuff in, right? Whereas it would only take a minute. Now what we're going to do is click on save, and we're going to go to property. So the first thing that you need to do in order to make this work effectively is you need to make sure MLS Connect is connected. And if you're in Santa Rosa, which is a different MLS, and it's not working, you need to call them and find out why, because this saves a lot of time. Now it's just spinning around, spinning around, spinning around. The second thing, so we've saved it, we're going to go to parties. Now you can either do this here. Amelia Mello is the listing broker. Timothy is this. I know both of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to documents and we're going to click on cover sheet. Now, if you had a template created, and I believe that Laura has gone through how to create a template. If you have a template created, you would have selected that template when you created the transaction, so all of these forms would be there. I'm not sure. I haven't had Laura create a template for me, so mine is not. I don't know. So the form we want to fill out is the cover sheet. So number one tip is make sure MLS Connect works. Number two would be have a template for all the forms. And number three would be use the cover sheet. And the cover sheet, so we're going to type in Billy Buyer, email address, and Devlin at, how am I doing, at kw.com. And we scroll down, and notice, isn't this beautiful? It's filled out all the information about the property. And there's a lot of stuff here that we don't need to know or fill out. There's a class that I do sometimes, maybe I'll add it into the sequence, where I go through the cover sheet and I basically highlight everything that you actually need to know. Right? Because a lot of stuff you don't need to know. So as we're going down here, the first thing we're going to put in is purchase price. Does everybody see that? Purchase price? We don't need to worry about any of this stuff. And for purposes of our exercise, we're going to make a full price offer. So we type in 920,000 and we hit tab, and it takes us down to the purchase agreement date. That's today. even if your clients aren't signing it until tomorrow, this is the date that it's prepared, the purchase agreement date. So I'm going to click on 7 and it puts it in. Closing date, my recommendation is, now I said 30 days. My recommendation is you pick a date. Laura and I were having this discussion. For those of you that aren't here, Laura is our transaction coordinator. And one of the fun things we were talking about is how agents count days. And what that means is that if I were to tell you 30 days from this date, what day is that? You will find that there will not be necessarily a consensus among the group as to what day that is. So for example, if I'm going to close escrow in 30 days, is today day 1 or is tomorrow day 1? How many vote that today is day 1? I'm writing the offer this morning. Is today day 1? Is it tomorrow? No, tomorrow is day 1, right? From today to tomorrow is day 1, right? But you understand, so you think you could have an argument with a listing agent as to what 30 days means, right? What does 30 day means? And it's 30 days from acceptance. Do we know when it's going to be accepted? Do we know? It might not be accepted at all. Could there be counters and counters and counters going to drag on? I have one that I'm helping with that dragged on for 2 weeks, right? So what does that mean? So what I would do is I would simply pick a date. I like sort of a date in the middle of the week, right? It gives us a little run time to get things ready, gives us a few days in case everything isn't going right. But that's a lot better. Now, the deposit amount is 3%, so you take out your calculator, 920 times 0.03 is $27,600, $27,600. Hit tab, that's the deposit amount. All right. Maybe I'll just do this and I'll have you guys do it later tonight. You can write me one. So we don't worry about deposit increase, second, third, don't do any of that. Offer date is the date that we're making the offer. Could that not, so when are we going to present this offer? Okay. Well, how about this? When will the, let me say it better, when will the buyer sign the form? So we're preparing the form today. Are they necessarily going to sign today? It might be today, it might be tomorrow. Usually it's the same date, but it could be another date. All right. Now, I know agents that think there's something freaky about having date prepared on the form and having it being different from the date that the buyer signed it. There's nothing wrong with that. Date prepared is the date you prepared it, right? Offer date is the date the buyer signed it.
So if we put July 7th here and then they sign it tomorrow, do we change it?
Yeah, who cares? By the way, that was not a Keller Williams approved comment. Just thought I would talk to your broker, but who cares? Right, is really my thought. Right. This is why. Oh, well, anyhow. So we can pick residential, amount finance. You see that box there? Amount finance. Oh, by the way, offer expiration date. I usually leave that alone unless there's something particular going on. And what that means is, I should ask you guys because you're good at the contract now, what is the amount of time the seller has to accept an offer? 3 days. And is there a possibility you might not want to give them 3 days? Especially if you're making what's called a preemptive offer. And a preemptive offer is where offers are due Tuesday. Right, my all cash buyer liked to do this because the first time I gave you the willies at first, but then I realized who cares? Because it would say we're taking offers on Tuesday and he would say, I don't care. I want to make an offer now. All cash, no contingencies, close in 10 days. Here's the price, just do it. I was like, right? And a lot of times people would say, okay, right? And you'd give people hours. not days, to decide. How long would it take a seller really to know if they were going to accept your offer? Minutes, right? You understand? 5 minutes. This is the price. This is 5 minutes, they can say yes or no. So we're not going to change this here, but I'm just pointing that out to you. Amount financed. So our property is $920,000. You multiply that times 0.80. It means the loan is $736. Right? So here we put in $736,000 and hit tab. Tab moves us to the next field. 736. So you should have a calculator handy on your computer. Notice mine is bookmarked down here. All right, it's in the tray. It's not bookmarked, but you know, don't get technical. Right, it's in the tray down there, so I can pull it up because you have to do the math. I've never gotten their calculator to work well. Right, if you can make their calculator work, show me. Right, but I just find the one that comes with the computer works better than the one that they give you with zip forms. How are we doing? You don't need to worry about escrow information. Now, if this had been a real template, which I didn't do because I was lazy, then all of this information would be filled out. Right? You understand? If you've done the template right, you should have a buyer template that has all of this information filled out. And when you apply the template, it would all be there. Notice it's filled out the listing agent's information automatically. Right? We're not worrying about that because I'm not doing templates and I don't have my template set up because I don't know. I do have it someplace, but I'm not worried about it. Nothing else here we need to worry about. We're going to click on Save. All right? We're going to click on Save. Right? Now we click on the back button, and the back button takes us to the dashboard where we only, if you have a template, you have a whole bunch more stuff. But I'm going to just add things because I'm generally not prepared. Residential purchase agreement. Right. So we're going to click on the residential purchase agreement. And this is what we get. Beautiful. Where is it? Come on. Oh, that's nice. All right, I'm going to go back, click on the residential purchase agreement, let it load again. I would practice this a lot. I'll tell you, has anyone ever, first time you showed a house, not been able to get the lockbox key to work? Anyone had that? Right?
I showed a house, I had trouble.
Yeah. How does it feel when they're all standing around watching you, trying to open the door? Doesn't that feel great? Right? You know, they're sighing, they're crossing their arms, right? So one of the things you ought to do is preview homes. Preview vacant homes. You don't have to call. Don't have to make an appointment. Just preview vacant homes, right? Pretty soon you'll be good by opening the lockbox. Would it create a sense of, gee, this person knows what they're doing if they could just walk over and open up the lockbox? If you can't do it, just think if your doctor was struggling to put together a hypodermic and it looked like it was the first time he ever did that, right? What would you be thinking? Well, you need a new doctor. So you need to do this often enough that this becomes something that if people are watching you, is it going to be harder when people are watching you? Right? Do you understand? Sometimes you're doing this in front of people. Is it going to be harder when people are watching you and you're fumbling around? All right, enough about that. You don't generally want to check that box here under agency disclosure. If you are, you're probably doing something wrong and you ought to talk to me, right? Because that's for leases, which we don't really do. Now, you should check. I'm going through the things that people, this is what I mark. I don't actually mark with a red pen. I used to do that, but people would cry. So I don't actually mark it with a red pen, but one of the things that people don't do is they don't check the box. In other words, it says Billy Buyer. Notice it's highlighted, but they don't check the box. Failure to accurately disclose agency relationships creates a contract that can be revoked. Failure to accurately disclose agency relationships creates a revocable contract. You understand, this isn't a little thing. So you check buyer, And if I had filled out the template, it would have had my name, my VRE number, all that sort of stuff would be filled out here. Now, what I do with date is if I know they're going to sign it today, I'll click on, and I think I picked the 8th. Let's say they're doing it tomorrow. I'll click on it and I'll let it put in the date. And I do that because I want to minimize the amount of stuff the buyer has to do. I want to remove obstacles to them, and this may not sound like a big one, but writing in the date each time is just sort of a pain. Why don't I just put the date in? If they're signing electronically, you don't need to worry about the date because the electronic signature programs date and time stamps it automatically. Is everybody with me? I'm not sure if this is going well or not from the looks on people's faces, but anyhow, I get that a lot. I just don't know. This second page, you don't do anything with. PRBS is pretty just straightforward. And then here's the table of contents. And so here's the purchase contract. So notice it didn't put in the close of escrow date. That's not uncommon. Just because you filled it out on the cover sheet does not always mean that it populates the information in the right place. I wish it were perfect, but it's not. So I'm going to click on this box because I like dates, and then notice now it put in August 17th. So it didn't automatically do it. I typed that in, but until I check the box, it doesn't put it in. And I didn't fill out I don't have so I'm going to say, I'm going to make up a different office. This is Bag of Chips Realty, right? So, because normally we're not making offers on our own listings, but yeah, question?
Yeah. So for the close of escrow, instead of the date, would you ever do the other one?
Sure. A lot of times I do it if it makes the listing agent happy. Or if I think there's going to be a long time before we know we're going to get an acceptance. So if the listing agent says the seller's in Shanghai and I don't know when they're going to be able to review it, then picking a date, if it could be weeks, picking a date might be a problem. Right? So sometimes I would put in 30 days. Sometimes the listing agents will say they wanted 30 days. I mean, they'll just say it. And I've learned not to argue with them. It's not a huge deal. I'm just saying that if the 30 days falls on a Monday, the buyer is going to have to fund on Friday. And when the buyer finds out that they are funding on Friday and not getting the house, but they're paying interest over the weekend, which will be hundreds of dollars, they're going to ask you to change the close of escrow date so they don't have to pay it. That requires an addendum, right? And I don't like to do addendums because I'm time efficient, right? So if I can avoid having to make an addendum later, I would do it at the beginning of the contract. So we're going to say Bag of Chips Realty, you know the company, all that, and the Bag of Chips. And so the other point that I find that people often mess up is they don't check the boxes. In other words, even though it's automatically put it in, they don't check the seller exclusively or the buyer. They don't check the boxes. Failure to confirm agency relationship constitutes a revocable contract. Failure to confirm agency relationships creates a revocable contract. This is not a little thing to miss, right? You understand? And what you don't want to do is to convey to the listing agent that you're a complete amateur and have no idea what you're doing. I mean, if I'm a listing agent and I see an offer and it's a mess, and I have to counter it to accept it. And then I get another offer that's close in price but professionally written, which one am I going to tell the seller we ought to go with? Right? Do you understand your ability to write a clean offer demonstrates to the seller your level of professionalism and the listing agent. You understand? And if you miss really important boxes, they'll think you're not paying attention. So the deposit got put in. I don't think there's any reason that you need to change it to cashier's personal check or other. If you're clicking on the boxes, you might want to give me a call because I'd like to hear why. All right, I'd like to hear why. The default setting is electronic funds transfers. If they don't want to do electronic funds transfers, is it okay for them to take a check? If the contract says electronic funds transfers, but the buyer shows up tomorrow with a cashier's check, will the escrow company turn them away? No, they'll take the check. Does the seller or listing agent care that it was a check as opposed to electronic funds transfers as long as within 3 days the money's in escrow? Do they care? No, right? But if you start checking boxes, if I'm the listing agent, I'm going to see you're just checking boxes. Some real estate agents randomly check boxes, right? I look at it and it's like, why did you check the box? And they're like, I don't know, right? You know, I don't know, just check the box. So don't just check boxes. Increase deposit, we're not doing that. If it's an all cash offer, you click on all cash offer. By the way, should you also select no loan contingency on the next page if it's an all cash offer? You can't. You can't. So if we click on all cash offer and then we go to the next page and we want to click on no, oh, it's letting me do it this time. Why did it, what was, oh, no, it didn't. It took it out. So this, by the way, is something you may have to explain to a listing agent, that all cash offers means there's no loan and therefore no loan contingency. But notice it took out my checkbox because it's saying to me, are you an idiot? You've already selected it's an all cash offer. Why are you removing your loan contingency? Right? Do you understand the program? There's some logic to that question. So I just thought I'd share that with you because I've actually had recently where the listing agent said, well, I want you to check no loan contingency when we were making an all cash offer. And I wanted to tell the listing agent, show me how you do that. All right. All right, so, well, that was fun. Whether or not loan amount not to exceed, I'm going to say 4.25%, although that's kind of high. If we're having a loan contingency, we need to put in interest rates. If we're having a loan contingency, we need to put in interest rates. And it would be good to put in a point. If we're having a loan contingency, we need to put in an interest rate. Does that make sense what I said? If we're having a loan contingency, we need to put in an interest rate. Because what that says is that if they can't get a loan for that amount, they don't have to buy the house. Now, right now, interest rates are not spiking, but just as a caution, there have been times in my career where interest rates went up like a couple of percent in a month. I mean, they just shot up, right? And the buyer can't qualify for the loan anymore because they didn't lock in their rate. And if you don't put that in there, then they can't get out because the rate's changed. Does that make sense? If there's a loan contingency, you put in. If there's no loan contingency, you don't need to put anything in here. Does everybody understand the difference between no loan contingency and an all cash offer? Right? You can have an offer without a loan contingency, but it has a loan. It's just that hopefully you've had the lender submit it to underwriting and they've blessed, right, sprinkled holy water, blessed the loan, and you can go in without a loan contingency. But that doesn't mean that it's, no loan contingency means you have a loan, but you're not making the offer contingent on it. Does that make sense? If you don't have a loan contingency, you don't have to fill anything in here.
So isn't our example?
My example, I said all contingencies. So our example has a loan contingency. Verification of down payment and closing costs, you should check that box. If you do not have a letter from a lender that says they can afford to buy this house, you shouldn't be writing an offer. And the letter hopefully is going to say that the lender has verified their assets and cash available. Otherwise, you're going to need copies of their bank statements that shows that they have the cash to do that. Appraisal contingency, we're leaving it because you understand, I don't know if you're, let me see. I don't want to sound, do I sound like I'm just grumpy all the time? Does it sound like I'm grumpy? You're lying, Randy's lying. So what I was about to say is that many real estate agents don't realize when the market is changing. The reason they don't realize the market is changing is because they don't come into the office, they don't talk to anybody, they're not previewing homes, they're not looking at what's happening in the MLS, they're not talking to other agents, they're not doing anything, so they don't know that the market is changing. Right now what's happening is we're finding that homes aren't appraising. So when the market is in a surge, appraisers, there's this old joke, you know, their association is the Appraisers Institute, and their business cards say MAI for member of the Appraisers Institute. Our old joke was MAI stood for made as instructed. Right? So when the market is going up and up and up and up and up, and the banks want to lend money, appraisers sort of go with it, and they go up and up and up and up with the appraisals. When they see the market starting to go down, 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 then the appraisers pull back, and the appraisals start to go down. So right now, we're seeing that appraisers are coming in low, right? Right. So knowing that, so should you be up on that the market is shifting a little bit? So so how many days is our appraisal contingency? 10. Who would tell us if that's a good number or not? Yeah, who else? We're not allowed to talk to the appraisers. The loan agent. The loan agent. Loan applications, you should have already done this, and you should be checking the box that says letter attached. If you don't have a letter that says they can afford to buy the house, you shouldn't be writing an offer. Loan contingency, I'm unclicking this. Notice once I remove the cash offer, it allowed me to put in the no loan contingency box again. I don't know if you noticed that, but when I clicked all cash offer, it wouldn't hold the no loan contingency. When I removed all cash, the click went back. 10 days for the loan contingency. You can still, even though the market is going down, make a no loan contingency offer if the lender has submitted the package to underwriting. Right, you understand that's different from the appraisal. Basically, they're saying that the buyers are solid, just find us a house that appraises. And then would that make it easier for you to get your offer accepted if there's no loan contingency? Should you have a trustworthy lender before you make an offer without a loan contingency? Lender limits on buyer's credit. I'm just filling out the form now, and I'm not going to explain anything. Generally speaking, down here, there isn't anything else you should be doing. If you're typing in some poetry next to other terms, you might want to talk to me first. Do you understand? If you're just freestyle typing in stuff, it would be good to mention it to me. Just say, hey, you know, call me. You know, I drive around a lot, but I answer the phone and say, I'm typing something in. I'd be happy to tell you if you should or not. All right. Inspections, reports, and certificates. This thing about the natural hazard, whether I check this or not would really depend on whether or not there's already one in the disclosure package. Assuming that there is one, I'm not going to check anything. If there isn't one, I'm going to check seller and environmental. If there is one, but there's no environmental, I'm not going to add the environmental. I'm going to talk to the buyer and ask them if they want one. And what an environmental is it is the property located near any toxic sites. Are there abandoned gas stations in the area? Are there abandoned paint stores in the area? Has there been any known toxic substance releases? And it's like 25, 30 bucks. And I would say to the buyer, do you care about that? Would you like to know about that? $30, you can find out. And then we would add that on. Right? But if I'm the listing agent, you're going to have one of these and it's going to say environmental. And that's because I don't want you to be able to back out because you found out something that you didn't know about when you made the offer in the first place. Right, because the thing I hated was escrows that did not close. Right, yeah.
Do you have any suggestions around septic and well inspections to put it here or not to put it here? Do it like off the contract?
You could, well, the question is about septic and well inspections, and you could do it here. The question is, are you asking the seller to pay for it, or are you going to pay for it, the buyer?
The buyer will pay for
Right, you don't have to do anything.
it. But just leave it out.
Because paragraph 12 in the purchase contract basically says the buyer can order any inspection the buyer wants. All right, and so I don't really know why, to me, this is only important if you're asking the seller to pay for something. So if I was asking the seller to pay for a well and a septic, I would check those boxes and say seller pays and for a well and a septic report. Right, but if the buyer's paying for it, you don't need to worry about it. Paragraph 12 says you can do anything you want.
Is it true that if you get that report done and it's in here, that the lender might ask to see the report and it could affect that?
Well, if you, the question is if you click there, would that be possible that they could see it? Yes. So one of the reasons to not add, they're going to want to see the natural hazard disclosure is required by law. But the answer is yes, the lender would care about, if you said well or septic, they would want to see it, which is why I normally don't do it. It's possible to make an addendum, which you don't show the lender, that says the seller, asking the seller to pay for it. But usually the buyer pays for it. Or the seller's already got one. Most of the times I've done it, the seller already had one. If I were selling a house and it had a well and a septic, I would strongly encourage the seller to get those reports up front because it's a deal killer, right? Are there any properties in San Jose that are well and septic in the city of San Jose? The answer is yes, I've sold some on Metcalf Road. Anyhow, so I would check the box. Seller is going to pay for smoke alarms, carbon monoxide installation and all that. 7B2, you can just leave it blank. Now, I'm not as up on Sonoma County, but Santa Clara County doesn't have any of these minimum mandatory government inspections. Santa Cruz does, right? Santa Cruz does. So the question, so in Santa Cruz, who's going to pay to make sure it's in compliance with the shower and the toilet, and all that other kind of stuff? Buyer or seller, right? It doesn't really matter. Typically, we would pick seller. So Santa Cruz County, by the way, there's some value in either specializing or at least doing research, because Santa Cruz County is in our MLS, but they have different rules, right? Some things that apply here. I had a client who wanted me to sell this house in Tahoe, and I refused to do it because Tahoe has a whole bunch of these things, and I just wasn't interested in learning that much about Tahoe real estate disclosures, right?
Also, they don't even, you cannot ask if they're MLS.
MLS doesn't know. MLS doesn't know. MLS is going to tell you, why don't you call the,
No, but I mean, even if you want to put it on MLS, you have to become a member of that.
which one? Tahoe?
Yeah.
Well, you can do a reciprocal. I'm not, but yeah. Yeah, and not today. So escrow, I'm going to click seller and seller. If I don't know the escrow company, I'm just going to put in seller's choice. And if I don't know the title company, I'm going to put in seller's choice. All right, that's what I'm going to do. And even if it's a buyer pay county, the listing agent has probably already opened escrow with somebody. All right. And they're not going to be happy if you want to change it. And you can make the argument that since the buyer pays, the buyer gets to pick. But they're not going to be happy with you trying to change the escrow company. All right? Now, if you have the only offer, that's one thing. All right. So this is in Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill has a county transfer tax. Does Morgan Hill have a city transfer tax? No. How do you know that? Chicago title transfer tax. So if you go to Chicago title transfer tax and we go to Santa Clara County, oh, come on, Chicago title transfer tax, come back to me. Too much high-level computing. So we go down to Santa Clara and we, SANTA, Santa Clara, it shows which cities have their own transfer tax. Mountain View, Palo Alto, and San Jose, that's it. Right? Mountain View, Palo Alto, and San Jose. If I'm a listing agent and I have a listing in Morgan Hill and you make an offer saying that we're going to split the city transfer tax, what do I think? You don't know what you're doing. Right? You didn't bother to even check. You're just randomly clicking boxes and typing stuff in. Right? Isn't that what I'm going to think? Right? And I'll be, anyhow. So Morgan Hill doesn't have one. If there was one, what I would do is I would check both buyer, seller, and type in split 50-50. If you just check buyer and seller, does that necessarily imply who pays what percentage? It could be 80-20, 60-40, right? So you check both boxes, say split 50-50. I understand Morgan Hill doesn't have one, but I'm just showing you what you would do if it's in San Jose, Milpitas, or Palo Alto. If there's a homeowner association, you would check seller shall pay and seller shall pay, and then don't check anything else on the way down to where we get to home warranty. Right? Seller pays for transfer fee, seller pays for homeowner association documents. Why don't I just do this as a generic, we do this and we do this if there's a homeowner association. I'm not going to explain what private transfer fees are, but we don't have very many. I'm going to have a title company come in and do a class on how to read a prelim. Because the answer to the question, how would I know if there's a private transfer tax, is you would have to read it on a prelim. And so I thought rather than me doing that, I'll have somebody who knows what they're doing explain how to read a prelim. So now we're talking about the home warranty. Are we asking the seller to pay for the home warranty?
Sorry, just on that. So if you're the buyer, you won't know if there's a private transfer fee.
You have to look at the preliminary title report.
Which you don't have.
Right.
So
if you want, you could click on that. By default, the reality is that there is, I don't even know if there's one in Santa Clara County, right? Because the form was written by the California Association of Realtors, and in Southern California, they have more of these. I don't even know if there's one in Santa Clara County. And what will happen is you'll spook the listing agents.
they're asking the same question.
Yeah, the listing agent will say, well, I don't know, oh God, what if there is one, what if it's a huge one, what do I do, and I don't know. And so they'll be spooked, right? Their listing agents are flying. Right, so it just is going to create a potential issue if you check the box. Are we having the seller pay for the home warranty? No. If the market shifts, the sellers used to pay for the home warranty. If it was my listing, chances are really good there's already a home warranty. Because I would have convinced the seller to put it on during the listing period so that there was seller's coverage. Mm-hmm. I also would explain to the seller that the errors and omissions insurance companies give us a discount in our policy based upon the percentage of home warranties that are issued with our transactions. And then I would ask the seller, why do you think our malpractice insurance gives us a better rate if we have most of our transactions covered by home warranties? What do you think? What is the reason?
The buyer won't come after you.
Because there's less lawsuits. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about that, Mr. Seller? Do you want to be sued? Want to go to small claims court? How does that feel? You want to do that? $500. How much is the price of this house? $920,000. $500, and you don't have to worry about a small claims action. Why not? Well, why won't the buyer pay for it? Well, first of all, you ought to have it on the property right now, right? Because if something breaks during escrow, you're covered, right? And I just, people would say $500, whatever, just do it, right? But if they're not doing that, then somebody's going to pay. I don't care who pays, if you pay or the buyer pays, but you want to be the one that orders the home warranty, right? Do you understand why I wanted to have the home warranty in place? Because my name is on the home warranty as the agent who ordered it, which means the buyer's going to get marketing material with my name on it.
So if you're gonna be the one that's gonna purchase it kind of as a gift, how would you write that in?
You just say buyer shall pay not to exceed $500, and you put it in. And then you just tell the buyer, I'm going to pay the home warranty for you.
Okay.
There isn't a box that says agent. But basically what's going to happen is the title company is going to ask about who's going to be paid, and you just say, I'm paying. By the way, the last one that I did, I selected air conditioner as well, because they had one. And I got them the full platinum policy. Right, the everything covered policy. Cost an extra $100 this one. Right. However, if something breaks, will they have a nicer feeling about me? Right, because I paid for this and it's got my name on it and they're covered. All right, let's keep going. A lot of this, we're running out of things to fill out. All right, I know because I get into explaining. Here we go again. I'm going to click on save. Maybe it'll come back. And then it went away. Isn't it nice? All right, let's, we've done most of what needs to be filled out. The bottom line is that if you keep checking boxes and writing things in from this point on, with one exception, you're probably making a mistake. So other things, if our washers and dryers included, our stoves included, our refrigerators included, that's something that you would want to know, right? What does the MLS say? And I would make it comply with what the MLS says. We're not worried about this right now. We don't know. I'm not going to do tenant in possession or any of that other weird stuff. And what we now want to do, paragraph 12, which I'm skipping by, is the paragraph that says that you can do anything you want, including water tests, shower pan, any report you want to order, you can order as a buyer. And then I'm going to go here, buyer has 10 days. Now, again, would you want to know whether or not the inspection companies are available and ready to do it? Right? All right. And then removal of contingencies. If you are removing any contingencies, if you're removing the loan contingency, in addition to checking the box that says no loan contingency, I would click on this and remove the loan contingency also. It'll make the listing agent happy. All right, but I'm going to do another class on contingencies. Does that sound like fun? We're not checking. There's nothing here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Keep moving. Nothing to see. Nothing to see. Nothing to see. And then the last part where I find people mess up is paragraph 31, where it talks about the offer. You need to type in your name here, right? You need to type in your name, because what it's basically saying is that you're the one designated to receive the acceptance. All right? And if you want to change it so they're not given until 5 p.m. into the third business days, you do that here. And if I'm asking the buyer to sign this, and they're doing it in person, I would probably go ahead and put in the date just to, right? So I like to go ahead and click in the dates so that they don't have to handwrite the date, handwrite the date, handwrite the date. Why?
Isn't it the one about it?
Oh, I did that on purpose to see if you were paying attention. And I'm glad to say you were. All right. Sound like fun? Was that helpful? Was that If I don't have to talk when I do it, it doesn't take me very long to write one. You know, especially if MLS Connect works, you have a template made up, and you use the cover sheet, right? And there's nothing weird, it takes 5 minutes. So what I'd like you to do, and it doesn't have to be this one, and you don't necessarily have to do it now, but since you're all here and want to, isn't that right? You want to, don't you want to? I'd like you to write an offer. Now, what I'm going to do, I'll do one final thing with this. Because I just like this part. I'm going to go over here to e-sign, and I'm going to go to sign this form. Now, the reason I request that you put in my email address as the email address of the buyer is so that when you click on sign this form, and it's going to load, and this is something you also ought to practice on. Here's Billy Buyer. You click on this, and you click on done. Now, if you have your template all filled out, it'll give you the choice of your signature also. Because page 8 has a place for you to sign. But what I just want you to do is to go through the process and send me.
After you click Billy Buyer, you send it us? Or-
You click on next.
Oh,
Click on next. And the thing I like about digital ink, I know that DocuSign and SkySlope and others are more elegant electronic signature programs, but I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to leave the program. I didn't have to download a PDF. I didn't have to upload a PDF. I didn't have to drop in signature spots or dates or anything because the CAR signature program knows where to put CAR signatures. And you can look at this to see if it got it right. If it's a CAR form, it gets it right. Notice it also puts in the date, so I wouldn't have to put in the date if I'm using electronic signatures. And then you send it to me, and this is, you send it, and I'll get a copy of I'll get a copy.
okay. I don't know if the address, I invented an email address.
Well, if you invent one, it's not going to allow you to import the information. So what I'd like you to do, and if you're in Santa Rosa, find any listing. I don't care, right? And if you're down here, pick a listing. Pick a house you'd like to buy if you had the money to do this. And write an offer and put me down as the buyer and send it to me. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Can I change that now?
Not, well, yeah, you can go to property and change it, I think, but if you are, I don't know.
What is your email?
mdevlin@kw.com. You must get emails from me,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, they're from KW Realty.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. I also send you ones from this one too. I'm going to start using this one too because.
So I have it, but I cannot send it. I put Billy at KW.
Well, you have to put my email, not Billy at, you know. You're going to have, so work on this. You can start over again and do another one, right? But we've done our hour. So what I'd like you to do is practice writing an offer, right? You can do more than one if you're an overachiever.
Yeah, I want to practice doing one with several people in the contract.
That's fine. That's a little a higher difficulty bar, but you have to use the additional signatures addendum. You can go ahead and try that, but it's a little more complicated. All right, but go ahead. All right, guys, online. Was that fun? Did you have fun? See or no? No? No. All right. I'm going to be, Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to be up in Santa Rosa.
Oh,
Yeah.
good time.